Continuing to talk about society's most vulnerable, let's turn to our men and women in uniform, our nation's soldiers. Big idea number 3, soldiers' personal health care decisions, including vaccination choice, are more restricted than for any other Americans. Captain Richard Rovet is retired from the Air Force after 24 years of exemplary service. He is a registered nurse with a Bachelor's of Science in Nursing. He served in Europe during the Cold War and as a flight medic in the Gulf War. To the chagrin of his supervisors, Captain Rovet interviewed soldiers and recorded post-vaccination illnesses at Dover, Wright-Patterson, and Keesler Air Force bases in Delaware, Ohio, and Mississippi. His advocacy for these veterans continues to this day and includes participation in today's rally. We salute Captain Rovet, who understands that a true patriot challenges the country he loves to live up to the promise of truth and the expectation of justice. We must defend the defenders. Captain Rovet.
Appreciate it. It's an honor to be here, and I just want to say it's phenomenal that we can organize like this and come together. I'm going to speak to us today about the most vulnerable of society's members, and that's the men and women in uniform. Many are right now protecting our freedom in austere conditions in dangerous places around the globe, and some may have given their life today in support of that freedom to do exactly what you're doing today. Unfortunately, these brave defenders of our freedom are defenseless against the mandatory use of dangerous vaccines, such as the anthrax vaccine and other biodefense vaccines that are waiting in the pipeline to be tested on our soldiers. For the past 64 years, the United States military and other agencies within our government have used our servicemen and women as test subjects, oftentimes in secret and without informed consent. And this isn't a conspiracy theory, okay? This is a fact. In December of 1994, the United States Senate released a report titled, "Is Military Research Hazardous to a Veteran's Health? Lessons Spanning a Half a Century." That was 1994, right after the Gulf War. Okay, the report outlines unethical use of servicemen and women as test subjects, guinea pigs, oftentimes in secret, and then they would not put it in their medical records so they could not get follow-up care afterwards, so they were left just to die. There are 3 key areas that provide a fertile ground for abuses in our servicemen and women to be used as guinea pigs. They are being used by the vaccine and pharmaceutical industry as test subjects. Number 1, military members can be ordered to take medicines and vaccines against their will or be imprisoned and discharged from the armed forces with a criminal record for the rest of their life. Right up there with rape perpetrators. Informed consent for the use of untested or unstudied medications or vaccines can be waived by presidential executive order, or if the defense establishment or the intelligence community deems there's a credible threat. Number 3, military members are barred from suing the federal government under an archaic, unconstitutional law that occurred in the 1950s called the Ferris Doctrine. Recent history has taught us nothing. Gulf War illness anthrax vaccine connection is evidence of this. Roughly 1 in 4 of the 697,000 veterans, my brothers and sisters, who served in the first Gulf War are afflicted with Gulf War illness. It was a toxic war, and there may be other contributory factors. But I'll tell you this, study after study shows a higher rate of Gulf War illness in vaccinated veterans. That's a fact. Unfortunately, DOD at that time ordered that the anthrax vaccine and the botulism toxoid vaccine would not be annotated in the shot record. Instead, it was under VAC A or VAC B. Another interesting fact is that our allied countries who vaccinated their troops for anthrax also have Gulf War illness, such as Great Britain. And I'm in contact with a lot of veterans in Great Britain, and they're suffering and being denied the rights that us veterans here are being denied. Interesting. Folks that fought alongside us in the Gulf War who did not take the anthrax vaccine have no incidence of Gulf War illness. For years, veterans and families begged for help to answers in an effort to mislead Congress, the press, and the American people to the extent of the damage to personnel from the conflict. The Pentagon's public affairs spin dubbed their campaign Operation Bronze Anvil, a cutesy term to push away any inquiry into Gulf War illness or anthrax vaccine connection. Fast forward. March 1999, military launches this mandatory anthrax immunization program despite its implication as a causative factor of Gulf War illness. I was at Dover Air Force Base and I witnessed a hotbed of illnesses and controversy. And the FDA tested lots of vaccine from Dover in 2000 and found an experimental adjuvant and immunoturbo booster, squalene, MF59. I want to burn that in your psyche. Think about that. Write that down, MF59 squalene. It's going to be used on civilian vaccines. I'd ask you to read award-winning journalist Gary Matsumoto's novel, Vaccine A. Great novel. Forensic evidence now exists to launch a full investigation of what appears to be a controlled experiment on our troops from the first Gulf War to present on the use of experimental adjuvants. I will have forever etched upon my memory seeing a young African-American girl screaming and crying and being held down while the anthrax vaccine was forced in her body. I will sadly remember my dear friend who died after anthrax vaccination, Clarence Glover. I will ever have in my memory those whose skin literally burned off of them with Stevens-Johnson syndrome, or the infants that I cared for with severe birth defects following anthrax vaccination. Corruption within our sectors of our government and private industry is well established. Go behind the curtain of the anthrax vaccination program and you will see bailouts, lucrative financial contracts, the revolving door of crony capitalism, and strong ties to the Department of Defense and the Department of Health and Human Services. I did not swear an oath to defend this nation against all enemies. I swore an oath to defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I didn't swear allegiance to a defense contractor and a hard-hitting lobby. America's sons and daughters are not guinea pigs. At the very least, informed consent must be provided, and the mandatory anthrax vaccination program must end and an investigation begin. God bless you.